So yeah, you were mentioning that topic that we had, as a sort of second topic for this nice chat, which is how tech savvy one needs to be to do stuff with AI models, and I think that's a question that many people are asking themselves. Um, we've both been teaching AI, doing presentations and helping people hands-on things like that. Looking at such a question, what do you see? Does it depend, or do you have a sort of a general rule of thumb? How do you see it?
Um, Going out of the linguistic and translation and strictly professional and work related environment, I see that it's more the 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 I don't know how to put it. It's more about not trying to use it than not knowing enough to use it. Um, and by that, what I mean is that maybe the main barrier to using AI is not wanting to use it. For now, this seems to have kind of vanished, not disappeared, but it's not that barrier is not as high as it was before. But for example, I like to also mention that, for example, for the general public who use AI to do stuff, that I think has been the main driver for the professional environment, because the general users are the ones that don't that kind of have like no strings attached, and they want to just play with it and ask stuff and create stuff and so on. And probably many general AI users have been creating some interesting either content um, or developments, platforms, and so on. And the key to that is that they probably started with intuition as their main skill.
Yeah.
So my starting point would be that the main element for using AI, at least for now, since we don't have so many buttons that say do this, do that, is you know trusting our intuition. But I don't know
Very
what you
interesting.
think or what you would recommend, Philippe, or if you have comments or colleagues that have shared something.
Yeah, I love this idea of intuition. It's the first time I listen someone putting it like that, but I really like it. It brought me back, to the beginning where it was all, a bit of a game. Tell me a joke or write a poem, or and you did funny things. Uh, if you're playful, you could, ask it to write a stupid poem about something funny, or yeah. So if you start, to play with it, I think that helps. You know, um, One thing I'd suggest is, avoid very personal information with these things, as always.
Definitely.
It's
Yeah.
like it's a bit the same as being online. And like you said before, we don't want to shove AI into everybody's throat. We're just tackling some questions. Um, but yeah, I think if if you don't have a specific, reason that you don't want to interact with AI, and if your mindset is I'd like to know how, I'd say first start by playing with it, having fun, doing fun things. And sometimes when we have fun ideas, we will ask something that will bring the system already to its edge, to its limits. And it's going to tell you, I can't do that. Sometimes it will tell you, I can't do that because it cannot. And sometimes going to do, I won't do that because I don't want to be talking about such and such topic, so they do
Yeah.
that too.
I
And
won't, but if I would.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's like, kids. The first thing they would do is say that will end up into scatologic and digestion stories and stuff like that. So yeah, and the LLMs, they don't want to play with that, which is yeah, for sure, makes sense. But as you learn, then you're going to see a bit the limits, and as you're doing that, you're learning how to prompt, because prompting is just knowing how to talk to an AI, to tell it what you want, also what you do not want, and learn how to interact with it. And I think going down the play route first, if that's your first time interacting with it, could be a good idea. Because otherwise, if you go into, I'd like to do something technical, the AIs, they tend to write a lot, and they're going to give you a lot of information and give you option A, option B, option C, and that's going to be not something that the user will want to read, and so they'll skip. And then depending on what they reply, then they're going to tell the AI to do something that wasn't exactly the original intention, and
Yeah.
you end up with the result is not that does not meet what you wanted. Um, so yeah, so learning to talk to them and learning to read the replies to sort of narrow down what you want and be able to get the robot to do what you want, because that's actually that, if I had to illustrate that, I'd say it's not super different than training a dog. you
Yeah.
know you 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 learn how the dog works, what's the dog's personality, and then you learn how to tell it to do what you expect effectively, and that's done by simple interaction. If you want to treat well an animal, you do it by expression and things like that, and you're not going to smash your computer with a hammer either, so
Yeah.
um,
Not the dog either, please.
no, never.
Never.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now all these things are done by talking. So
Yeah.
that's the idea. Interaction. Okay, it's a robot and it's going to talk like a human. It's still a robot, and it needs to learn to do what you want it to do, and you need to learn how to tell it to do what you want it to do. Very strange way of putting it, but that's, I think,
Yeah.
the shortest way
Yeah,
to think
definitely.
about it.
Yeah, and also the AI models also lack the, well, we what we discuss everywhere all the time, like the human factor. And even if we speak of human dog interaction, the doggy factor too, because that special something that we have. and um and yeah, so all we have is language, written language, or maybe sometimes spoken language, but trying to decipher how to get the best out of the interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very strange because
Uh,
at the end of the line, we start with language, and at the end of the line, it's ones and zeros.
yeah,
So the
all the way in the
distance is
back.
so strange. It's so
Yeah,
strange. But that's it's a robot. You're
yeah,
talking to it, and so
yeah,
you're
and
expecting
like,
something.
yeah, like Nora. I always quote Nora Diaz because she has really great analogies and great ways of uh, delivering the messages. But she said, if we want to ride a great car, we don't even need to know what's under the hood. We only need to know what button or what key to, enable, and then know how to drive it. So what I mean by that is, maybe, we don't need to be highly technological, or even we don't need the most elaborate prompt because, very complex and very, elaborated prompt is not a guarantee that the result
Yeah,
is going to be great or that the result is going to be better than a simple, straightforward, caves people like prompt.
totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, depends what you're expecting. So, and some actions that are done with prompting when you're interacting, like in chat. Okay, um, so for people when they use it, it's they open, for example, ChatGPT inside their computer or in the app, and the thing says hello and what do you want, blah blah blah, and then you start interacting with it. So that's really like a chat interface. And when you're prompting there, you can go step by step. You can start doing something, and adding step by step to get a result that is probably more complicated in the end. When you're connecting an AI to your CAD tool, it's a bit different. So if you're a translator, you're using translation software, and you're connecting the AI there, then the prompt that you will be using will be sent once, and everything must happen with that one prompt and getting the result. So some tools, like for example WordFast Anywhere, you have all the prompts ready made, and that's useful. I mean, all the prompts, you have a lot of prompts ready made, and they are there for you at the push of a button or a click, and that saves on your work. That's easier. You don't have to come up with the prompt. But if you come up with one, then you can put it in it. But that's the difference. And I think that for people sometimes that's a bit strange, because they think that maybe they're going to get a chat interface popping up in the CAT tool. Maybe
Yeah.
some online translation systems have that. But if you're going to go translate a full text or go segment by segment, then having a chat interaction all the time, it's going to be slowing you down. So you want
Yeah.
something that goes faster, and so that's the way it happens. And I think that can also be surprising to people. It's like oh, there's AI involved there. I don't really see it. What's happening? Or I have a prompt to change. Where is that? And what will I do? And if I change the sentence, will I break it? So you've got
Yeah.
all that there that can be very difficult to.
So let's stay there for a little bit and let's break this down a little bit because there's again a lot of information that's really interesting and useful. But what I since I know what you're talking about, the picture that I get is, for example, in your CAT tool, ideally, well, nowadays CAT tools, I mean the translation software in general that we can use, tend to include more and more AI, applications and so on. In the case of WordFast Anywhere that you mentioned, um, what you get is, on the one hand, well, a general interface to connect to the AI. You get preset prompts, right? Which is that you don't need to write your own prompts if you don't want. You just press a button or you configure a button, and then you get the AI to do whatever you need to do. Let's say translate, taking a look at the context and so on. Okay. Also, we can also do QA and other stuff. All that comes from the factory. Let's say that comes preset.
Yeah.
You can also customize that. All right. So if you're feeling creative or if you want to, take the preset prompts to the next level, you can customize them. And you mentioned something before and now again, which is you can go segment by segment or you can do the whole thing, right? So in the case of segment by segment, one a concern that I had for a long time since the language models came up and we started testing them and so on is specifically that the context, because usually when you go segment by segment, for example, if you have reference, via pronoun, let's say this, or I don't know. I Right now I can't think of other example. It, the
In
great,
English, it's harder.
the
Yeah,
great placeholder.
yeah.
It, So if you don't have the idea or the concept of what happened before, you lose that reference, and
Mm,
you don't know what it really is. So what I see is that, for example, now one great feature that we get is being able to analyze the context, even if we are on one single segment, but at the other end of the line, let's say, we can also process the whole text in
yeah,
order to have a more coherent, automatic AI generated, non-human produced, to be, post edited pre-translation. Okay. So in my head and my wishful thinking, this will leverage better everything in terms of context, terminology, repetition, named entities. For example, when the name of an organization comes up several times in the same document, machine translation does, their best, but still, needs to take it up a notch, and
yeah.
so on. How possible is this nowadays using AI in CAT tools?
Well, that depends very much on the cat tool you're looking at. Some cat tools do it, and some don't. Some give you the impression that they do it, and actually don't. So, and then things will depend on the model that you're using. Uh, so the AI model, I mean, so that would be depending if you're going with ChatGPT, with Gemini, with etc. So you choose your brand, and that will depend on the language pair you're working with. Because
Yeah,
even if you are
note for that.
providing context, but if you are using a language pair that is challenging for the AI model, um, for example, if you're using, if you're doing Russian into an Indonesian dialect, maybe your AI engine will say, I can do it, but the result will be very poor, even if you give it context. So that will depend. But I'd say, testing it is the best way to see if it's working. I remember something we discussed before where you had a text written by an author, which is a woman. And so we see she, in the text, but to do all the accords, um, when talking about the author, we have to find somewhere the name of the author to see if we're going to do she or if we're going to do he, when referring to it. And as humans, we just glance over the text, we notice who, where, when. Okay, but for a robot, that is more challenging to do. And if you are taking a segment from that text, so just a sentence, and we don't have the reference of who's talking, well, the AI or even the machine translation is blind to who's talking, and you can miss the correct accord, So if you give the full context, and if the AI model that you're using is capable of noticing that, then it will do the correct accord all the way. And so for the translator that is using AI, it will mean less post editing effort. So that's where the benefit is because you have less things to correct. So that's lightening your workload. Um, and that's very interesting because in some situations context is really really important. So all those false friends, all those things that are very specific sometimes, that you have terms that, for example, in the medical world are completely different in their use that in general conversation. So all that, making these distinctions with context is useful. I hope that's making sense and that's understandable, but
Yes.
that's where the
Oh,
difference
well,
is,
it
you
does
know?
to me. But
Yeah,
yeah, we need to find out if everyone's following our train
yeah,
of thought, which is
yeah.
kind of
Write in the
reckless.
comments, you know?
Yeah,
Write in the comments,
um,
so that
yeah, definitely.
in the next podcast we can adjust,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Philippe, I have a very interesting text that I'm going to share with you, which is a letter addressed to the members of a committee. Of course, I created that letter, and you find out who the sender is all the way at the end of the letter, where it is signed by
All
the
right.
chair of the committee. And the interesting thing about the context and analysis and so on is that there are several adjectives that, well, I forgot to mention something. I work with English and Spanish, and in this case the translation was from English into Spanish.
Hmm.
So many of the adjectives from the English version would be translated into Spanish, and the feminine form is the if the context is retrieved properly. Okay, so far, mentioning different applications that we've been testing, the only place where I was able to retrieve that up to recently was CodeTranslator AI, because I did kind of a hybrid situation where I started the project in Trados Studio,
Hmm.
then did a bilingual export. The file, we were mentioning the file before. I did a bilingual export where you get the doc file with the
Yeah.
two columns editable, okay? And then over there, I ran Code Translator AI, which I usually like to define it as a floating app because it does stuff over everything that has editable text. And then instead of going segment by segment, I was able to run one single prompt, like you mentioned before, Philippe, over the whole text at once. And then in that case, I was able to get a text that was a bit more aligned with the context. Still, it was, of course, needed several improvements, but I am really looking forward to being able to do that inside a cut tool without doing so many steps, because uh, do you want to know the complete workflow? It was a
Yeah,
bit,
no,
messy, but
I sort of guess what you're doing, but for all of you that
yeah,
are watching,
yeah.
something that you can try if you know how to export a bilingual in a document that can be opened in Microsoft Word or in OpenOffice. Well, all these. So some CAD tools will export that in .doc, some in .docx, some others in
Mm.
.rtf. Okay, so all these formats that can be opened in Microsoft Word. So if they can be opened in Microsoft Word, chances are that a chatbot that you can open in your browser can now handle those files. It couldn't be done before, but it can be done now.
How's
So
that so?
yeah,
I
so
want to
that
know.
means that if your format is accepted in, for example, let's say ChatGPT, okay? So you take that file and you upload it to ChatGPT, and in the prompt you're going to tell it that two column, okay? So you're going to have, in your case, for example, English on the left, which is the source text, and Spanish on the right, which is the target text. And you're going to be able to tell it, okay, so now on the right hand side, it's still English, but I want it in Spanish. So translate only what's in the cells, in the column, and it will do it. And you tell it that you want the same file type in return, and you download your document. Okay, I know it works because I did it with Claude recently.
Okay.
And so you get your AI, which is going to have the full context of the file. You have to tell it to work only where it's allowed. So tell it not to work anywhere else. Okay. And then you get the result and you use that to import back into Trados and you're good to go. You know,
Hmm.
so that's something that if you are a bit familiar with prompting, it doesn't have to be super difficult. You just need to tell your AI Don't use this and this and this. Only focus on that column and translate.
Yeah.
And you should be able to get your document back. It's going to take a while, okay? Uh, sometimes, depending on the length, you can expect 10, 15 minutes of processing, sometimes more if you are, doing that at rush hour. But you're going to get your file back and you can import it back. So, yeah, if that's your time to go
That's
cycling,
interesting.
do your run or something like that, you go do it, and when you're back, you have your file processed. So that's something that, if you know how to export it, you should be able to try that. If you're watching
Yeah.
this, try it. Let us know in the comments how
And
it
then
went
let
for
us
you.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a feature that's available in many or most cut tools nowadays. So, anyone can give it a try.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
See if you do it. Yeah, that wasn't rehearsed. We didn't discuss that before,
No.
but that would be fun. That would be fun to do. Okay, so prompting. So we discussed that. Um,
Oh, Philippe,
and
before I
tell
forget,
me.
maybe to kind of round up this topic, what advice would you give to people who really haven't tried anything at all of artificial intelligence or language models or chat whatever, or to people who are in their first steps and they want to go a step further or beyond? What would you recommend?
Well, I'd say the same thing I said earlier. Start playful.
I
Have fun with
That's
it.
great.
You know,
Oh,
you
Spanish came
know.
out.
So try that. If you are already using these tools and you have, a feeling that now you know more or less how they work, then if you want to go steps further, then you can challenge it. I need to do something, or I have a problem and I need to solve it, and you start with it something challenging and you go step by step, and see where it takes you. That experience will help you for the next thing.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, I would like to add that also maybe it would be good to observe how
Mm.
non translation people play with AI, because they are less prejudiced and less worried about so many things that we worry about in our practice. So maybe I would also add that.
Very good. Yeah. But for the situations where we don't want the content that we have to be on the internet where we don't want it to be. So we feel that we don't want to put that content in a large language model. So can I do it only on my computer? And that brings us to our final topic for today. So, are there
How's
things
that
that
possible?
we can do locally?